Can you look at the person in your table and say, good evening? And if you are with a family member, your spouse, give them a big hug, because this is indeed a reunion of family all around the world, isn't it? So it is a privilege for us to be here. I heard I was called while I was out. I thought people were going to go through the verse still, but it is such a privilege to be with you all because of our passion to change the world one family at a time. Wherever we have the privilege of speaking, I like to challenge people with this statement. Can you look at the person in your table, and I'll say this in Filipino first, say, magbago ka na. Ayan. If you are in the English language, look at them and say, it's time to change. You can say that in your own language. It's time to change. So, how are we going to change? What areas will we look at tonight? I want to share with you, because this is a family gathering. This is our family. I don't know if you believe it. My wife and I have 6 children. Last I checked, all from the same father and mother. We have a 21-year-old in the US, and then all the way down to the 5-year-old in my arms. And we are blessed that there are 3 boys and 3 girls. Truly a blessing from the Lord. Children we do not deserve. A wife I do not deserve. I still wonder how it all happened, right? Is that right? I do not deserve her. As we were asked to share tonight along the lines of your theme, stronger together in Jesus, I was praying. I said, Lord, how would you like to speak to all of these amazing leaders who have gathered tonight from all over the world? I remembered one of my favorite ads. I'll share it with you, and then I'll set up our conversation for tonight. Here's the ad. Before we get carried away, this is not a recruitment for the US Army, right? I say this is one of my favorite ads because of the context of your theme. As I was praying and saying, Lord, how can we speak to this theme tonight? I want to jump on that ad and say, with all due respect to the US Army, there is Army strong. But today, as we look at these verses from Paul, there's Jesus strong. Can you look at the person in your table and say, be Jesus strong? Go for it. Be Jesus strong. I love how Paul talks about this. And it's funny how Paul isn't even a family guy. He has no kids, no wife, right? But in verse 6, as he closes, he says, finally, before this, he talks about marriage relationships. I'm sure many of you know that. He talks about child and parent relationships. So much of the family relationships, as he closes this conversation and reminder to the church in Ephesus, he says, finally, be strong in the Lord. If we really want to see stronger families working together, we need to be Jesus strong. I have 3 words because we're all full and there's very little retention left in our brains, and we want to see the entertainment for tonight, which is going to be a lot of fun, I hear. Surprises from all over the world. We want to just share from our hearts and ultimately from God's word 3 simple words. How can we be Jesus strong? And because I'm a dad with 6 kids and I'm in education, I want to give you these 3 words. Can everybody say and do the actions with me? Focus. All right, everybody around the world. 1, 2, 3. Good job. Second word, if there's focus, there is foster. You guys are good. Third word. Third word. We're done. Let's close in prayer. You guys are focus, foster, guide. What does this look like? Let's be more practical. Focus on yourself first. If we want to be Jesus strong, we want our families to be strong in the Lord, do the mission that God has for us. Focus on ourselves first. Second, we foster strong bonds in the family. Finally, we guide them to God. So what are these 3 words again? Let's see how these play out. The first, focus on yourself first. I love how when we look at the Bible, if we want to be strong in the Lord, if we want our family relationships to be strong, we see that Paul says, I can do all things through him, Jesus, who strengthens me. So there's a big reminder, and many of us know this already, but it really does start with us. How are we with Jesus lately? Are we doing all things through him who strengthens me? Or are we doing it through our own ability, our supposed success? And we're trying to use that as a way to move forward when God is reminding us, are we okay? Are you strong in me first? Let's take a look at how we can make this more practical. I love this verse that reminds us, especially in the homes, and because of Professor Slayton's passion for fathers, I share the same. If you're a father, raise your hand right now. Fathers, right? A large part of this message is for us. If we want to lead and guide our families, be imitators of me, just as I am of Christ. So we're asking ourselves, am I strong in you, Lord? Do they see you in me? These are part of the questions we want to ask. So what is the first word again? It is, let's make this practical. Practical. What does this look like? Focusing on ourselves first, making sure that they see it in us. I have a FOYF checklist. Can anybody guess what is FOYF? Good job, honey. Focus on yourself first. It's not complicated, right? Focus on yourself first checklist. FOYF. First, I am blessed to have a good father. Now, I've had wounds, I'll be honest. Those of you that have heard me share this in other occasions, but by the grace of God, we were able to heal those wounds with my father, and we have a good relationship today. But a man that influenced my life in my later years, in my adult years, has been Joy's father, my father-in-law, who I also look up to as a father. And this one-man principle, as far as the focus on yourself first, looks like this. Are you the same person that people see outwardly in the workplace, that people will also see in the ministry, that people will see in your home, and then for the spouse, that your spouse will see in the bedroom? Are you with me? Are you the same person? Or, well, I'm different outside. I do business differently. Ministry, I'll act all nice because it's ministry, right? With my kids, maybe a little differently, depending on the day. And with my spouse, oh, that's a whole other conversation. And I was like that for the most part. I compartmentalized everything until I realized, wait a minute. If we're going to be Jesus strong, imitating Christ, we need to be one man, the same person. And I was blessed to see the life of my father-in-law up close as he mentored me. He healed me from wounds I had from various relationships. And as I watched his life up close, I saw in the boardroom, whether it's work related or in the ministry or in the home with the family and with the siblings, with the grandkids, of course, not in the bedroom. That's a different conversation, right? But in most of those circles, he was the same person, consistent. It's a hard ask, but it is possible. So if we want to be Jesus strong, part of the question is, are we the same person? Now let's be even more practical. I can be the same person everywhere where I'm just irritable and short fused. Does that make sense? With the business world, like, hey, just get it done. My kids, hey, just get it. I can be the same person in all those spaces. But clearly, if we want to be Jesus strong, we want to ask, are we Christ-like in all these spaces? One man. That's what this means. Second question, am I accountable? Many of us we're all Christians here. We've seen many amazing leaders, and I'm sure you've had your fair share, who suddenly we see shockingly not finishing well. Some shocking news about them, and you're like, how could this have happened? All the people around, all the things that he's done or she's done. And when we get closer to the root issue, we realized Jesus strong doesn't mean I've got it all on my own, figured out, and I'm going to go solo. It means we need to be accountable. So that's another question. If we want to be Jesus strong, are we accountable? Are there people who actually can ask us hard questions and we would be open to them? Are you with me so far? So this does not need over-explaining, but because many of you are leaders all around the world, this could be the trap that as you lead, as we lead, and as we grow, we fail to make ourselves accountable to people who can ask hard questions. If we do not want to fail, if we want to be Jesus strong, we need to be accountable. Am I disciplined? This is a big thing that I've been seeing, especially lately. Some of my own heroes in leadership who straddle the ministry and the workspace and family life, which is a hard ask. I've seen discipline. I've seen how one of them, his name is Craig Rochelle. I remember what he was saying. He's saying in a podcast interview, he said, success is not achieving the end goal. Success is doing what you know you need to do today. Does that make sense? So if I want to gain 10 pounds of muscle, I want to work out and get there. The end goal would be 10 pounds, 10% body fat. But success is not necessarily getting there, although that is it. It is being able to say today, if I need to work out 30 minutes doing the drills, even if I'm tired and exhausted, I will do it. That is part of success. So discipline is critical. He says, successful people do consistently what other people do occasionally. Does that make sense? So it's so important for us to ask, if we want to be Jesus strong, am I disciplined? Let's look at some quick disciplines for us Christians. Do you know what? Remember the actions we're doing right now? Let's see if you guys still remember. So here are some more quick actions to remember the disciplines as a good follower of Jesus. What is this? Word. Do we spend time in the Word? Let's go together. Come on, guys. You're on a good roll with actions. Next is, how is our prayer life? Do we have good time with the Lord to say, Lord, I need you right now. I want to bless your name. You're so amazing. One of the things that blesses me about Professor Slayton and your movement of F.F.G is how you are so focused on. So word, prayer, what is this? Fellowship. Are you meeting with other believers who are holding you accountable? Fellowship. That is a discipline. Are you able to do that? At CCF, we're very big on discipleship, making sure that there is that relationship that people can hold you in check. So what is it? What is this? My A student. She knows all of these hacks. Worship. Do we honor God on a Sunday? Do we honor God on a Sabbath day? Where we're like, I'm not going to work. I'm going to give you this day. Worship. It's you, Lord. Discipline. Finally, this is something that might not be appropriate because we just ate. Fasting. That's right. Fasting. The discipline of fasting. Do we use that tool that God has given us to unleash amazing things as we see in the Bible? To make all those disciplines real, as we're asking ourselves, am I disciplined? Last action for this part. Application. My A student again. Application. Application. If it's not something we do, I can tell you all these things. Hey, here's what I'm doing. I can listen. I can go on Sunday. I can worship. I can fast. But if I don't apply it, if it doesn't change me, it doesn't have any fruit. Does that make sense? So am I disciplined? Let's wrap this up. This checklist. Number 4, am I authentic? I want to be authentic with you. If we want in our homes, our children to have a tender heart towards us, as I said, I want to make a disclaimer here. We are still in the trenches. As you saw, my kids, 21 down to 5. Many of you have many seasons of parenting and experience, which we're learning from. And in fact, sometimes I feel like maybe you guys should just come up here like Jim and Miss, you come up here, share what you're doing, right? We're rookies. But one of the things we've seen that works from even our own heroes in parenting and in family is authenticity. Give you example. Late last year, I came home super exhausted, super tired. And as I was about to crawl into my bed to fall asleep and just crash, I saw my second son on the bed with my wife. They were just chatting. So I figured, okay, I'll go to my side, fall asleep. As I was going into the bed, my wife looked at me and she goes, so in Philippine, that means look over there, right? She's pointing me to my son. And I look at him and he's crying. I'm like, oh, this big grown guy. He's crying on the bed with my wife. And I said, I just want to go to sleep. In my mind, I want to go to sleep. I don't know what's going on. So I asked, I said, hey, what's going on? And he starts crying more. And he says, Dad, all the things that I did not want to be as a father, I saw in you. I was cut to the core. I was shocked. I was like, I just want to go to sleep tonight. In my mind, I was like, what happened? We're helping with family ministry. We have this great family. We're a Christian family. We're homeschooling, all these factors. I'm like, where was this coming from? And I'm sharing this because in my shock, I wanted to respond and say, how dare you? You have no idea what I'm going through. You're not grateful. I'm doing the best I can to be a good father, to provide. And, I had a really rough day. I wanted to say all those things. But as I was praying to God, I realized, amongst many things, that for us to be Jesus strong, if we want to be good examples to our kids, we cannot pretend that we are perfect parents. Does that make sense? Because there are no perfect parents here. Instead, we need to be humble, own up to what we have done, and ask for forgiveness. So by the grace of God, in that moment, instead of explaining myself away, instead of retaliating, instead of justifying, I looked at him, I said, Eden, will you forgive me? I'm so sorry that you feel this way. And as he said that, he started to calm down. And if you know my wife, because she likes to post things on social media, she said, hug him, hug him. I was like, babe, it's not the right time. It's like, hug him, hug him. She was getting her camera. I'm like, so I just looked at her. I looked at my son. I said, will you forgive me, son? I talked to him. I said, I'm sorry you feel this way. I'm actually shocked that you're saying this because I don't know where you're coming from. But I want to change. I want to understand you. And I am sorry that you feel this way. So cut the story short. After I expressed that to him, he calmed down and then we hugged each other. And then my wife took a photo. But he was able to express himself to me. And after that, I understood why he felt that way. And he apologized to me. I said, Dad, I think honestly, I was overreacting. So will you forgive me also? So he healed that. And I found that to be a powerful moment for him and me, because what am I sharing? If we want to be Jesus strong, it is not perfection, it is progress. I will do my best to be better son, daughter. Does that make sense? Am I authentic? Let's wrap this first point up. Last one, am I being or doing? What does this mean? Many of us who have been walking with the Lord many years, I want to encourage you. You're all serving in various capacities around the world. Do not let your work for God destroy the work of God in you. Let me say that again. Do not let your work for God destroy the work of God in you. Are you so busy, even in ministry, serving in so many fronts, that inside we're running on empty? I think much of our modern day culture says you go, you push yourself, you hustle hard. The more exhausted you are, the busier you are, the better. But the truth is, as we saw, even in Jesus' life, he had a Jesus pace. He knew when to hustle, he knew when to withdraw. Hustle, withdraw. Does that make sense? So my last question, as we look at this checklist, Jesus strong, me first, focus on myself. Am I being or doing? I like how Craig Groeschel says, if the devil can't destroy you, he will distract you. So friends, leaders from all over the world, from my heart, from God's heart to all of you, have you been distracted lately? Or are you able to say, by God's grace, healthy pace, Jesus pace, I'm able to be, not just do. Let's go to the second one. What is our first one? Our first F is, good job. One more time, guys. Second F, foster strong bonds. I love this because this speaks specifically to the theme. The verse that was given in many of your posters is in Ecclesiastes, right? So I don't need to read it, but you guys have seen this because this is your theme. What I love about this is I said, this is the theme. How do we make this relevant to the families here, to the teams here? When I did a quick hack on ChatGPT. Yeah, I did that. I did a ChatGPT hack. I'm like, ChatGPT, tell me about bonds. Give me something that I can use. I found out something very interesting. When I ChatGPT'd chords and bonds, it showed me something very interesting. Let me zoom in on this so I can get to my point. As far as strength is concerned, if a cord is woven, so 3 strands, not easily broken, right? You can have 3 strands that are side by side parallel cord, or you can have them woven together. Does that make sense? So I asked ChatGPT. A woven cord, it says, involves interlocking the strands, creating a stronger bond between them. It distributes the load evenly across all strands, enhancing the overall strength of the cord. Parallel strands, if they're just side by side, without weaving, they're not as securely interconnected. It may result in lower strength compared to a woven cord because it's not evenly distributed, leading to a potential point of weakness. You know where I'm going with this, right, guys? Another thing, flexibility. The woven cord, the weaving process can add some rigidity to the cord, making it less flexible than parallel strands. However, this rigidity can also provide more stability, resistance to twisting or kinking, or the devil's temptations, or the devil's schemes. You guys know where I'm going with this. A parallel strand, if they're not tightly bound together, can offer greater flexibility. They can bend and twist more easily, which can be advantageous in applications where flexibility is a priority. You can live your own life, even if you're in the home. But how far will that take you? Ask those questions. Finally, ChatGPT. Woven cord. The woven process generally increases the cord's durability. It'll go longer. It will wear better. The interlocking strands reduces friction, minimizing wear and tear. Hey, it's okay. I've got you. Dad's here for you. Mom's here for you. We're here for each other because we are a strong family unit. Parallel strands without the weaving, they may experience more friction and abrasion between the individual strands, potentially leading to faster wear and reduced longevity. As I said, you know where I'm headed with this, right? So here's the point. I love how the Bible is so intentional. And your chosen theme verse, there is something about a family being like a strong cord cannot coexist in parallel strands. They need to be intentionally woven together to be stronger. Are you following the text? So, how do we do this? Foster strong bonds. Let me give you quick tips and then I'll go to the last point and then we're done. The Bible tells us, well, if we want to foster strong bonds, weaving into each other's lives, don't focus on yourself. Many of us know this verse, right? Look at the others more important. Let me take you into a different context. So I used to be a business anchor for a very popular network here. Salute to my dear friend there. And one of the guests I had is now the current richest man in the Philippines, Manny Villar. When I invited him, he had success in politics, success in business. My guesting with him was in Filipino, isang tanong, isang sagot. So I would ask him a question and he would just say yes or no. It's not very good TV. So I was thinking, how do I let this guy open up? So it's a richer conversation. So it's great to watch, lots of insights. And I remember the principle from another consultant who I had met in my first job, a sales guru in his mid-60s. He was at this table about to meet a client. I was there also. I said, hey, what do you do? He said, I'm a sales consultant. I said, can you give me one free tip about selling? And he gave me this tip, which I never forgot. He said, Edric, people like themselves. I'll say that again. People like themselves. In other words, if you like basketball and I like basketball, you will like me because we have the same interest. Does that make sense? So I was thinking about, I'm like, Manny Villar. I remembered his write-up. He likes tennis. I like tennis. So I changed the conversation. Instead of saying, hey, what was it like growing up poor? I mean, how did that affect your mindset? And how did you get out of that? You know, what did you do with money? Because I shifted it to tennis. He was like this, right? In there. Yes, no. I said, so let me change the conversation, Mr. Villar. Tell me, I hear you like tennis. He did this. He said, yes, I like tennis. I said, who is your favorite player? And he gave me his favorite player. I said, that's my favorite player too. And suddenly the conversation came alive. And it was such an engaging conversation. I immediately shifted gears. I looked at my producer and I said, so let's go back. Tell me about your childhood. What did you learn about being? And it was so much richer and so much more entertaining from a viewer standpoint. Why do I share that? If we want to foster strong bonds in our families, thinking about the other more than ourselves means asking this simple question: what do my children enjoy? What does my spouse enjoy? That I can show I am genuinely interested in. I will go shopping with my wife, for example. I don't necessarily like shopping, only quirky things around the world. That's me. I'm weird, right? But generally, I don't like that. My kids, they started getting engaged in things like Bakugan or Beyblades, you know, all these things. Because I wanted to show that I loved them and that I enjoyed them, I would go into their world. If we want to foster strong bonds, go into their world. Find out what they like, that you like, and then engage them there. Are you guys with me so far? Great. So what are we learning? Focus, foster strong bonds. Let's wrap this up. I like how the Bible tells us He is before all things, and in Him all things hold together. I'm going to segue to the final point to keep to our time. Although I have so many things I still want to say, but I'm going to keep it short. What are we learning again? If we want to be Jesus strong, we think F.F.G. Let's go to guiding. There's so much to say about fostering strong bonds, but I want to segue to the last point. If we indeed want to foster strong bonds, we realize it's not our own ability. Carl, even if he's involved in dads and moving them together in the school, if we go on our own ability, we're not going to go very far. Because the truth is, who holds our family together? Who holds F.F.G. together? Who holds all of us together? The Bible tells us it's Jesus. This is why we need to be Jesus strong. It's Jesus that ultimately holds us together. So this is why we lead to the last point. If we want to be Jesus strong, stronger together, stronger as a family, it starts with us. So what is our first point again, please? On myself first. Strong bonds. Finally, guide them to the Lord, because He will be the one that ultimately takes them through. I love this verse. Psalm 78, it says, for He established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which He commanded our fathers that they should, so the parents should teach them to their children, that that generation and the generation to come might know, even the children yet to be born, so several generations down, that they may arise and tell them to their children that they should what? Put their confidence in God and not forget the works of God, but keep His commandments. So here's an honest question we need to ask ourselves. If we want to be Jesus strong, and our children will ultimately be strong in the Lord, do we allow them to experience God's wondrous works? The verses before that talked about the wondrous works of God. Do we let them know who this God is so that they will put their confidence in Him? Not because mom and dad said so, not because they're connected to the church, not because they're in a Christian school, but because it's real to me. I've seen His wondrous work in my life. So a question we want to ask is, do we give our children stories to tell? Do we put ourselves in faith-stretching opportunities so that in their own eyes, they will see, God, this God is real. And that's what I'm hearing in some of the conversations we've been having tonight with some of your amazing leaders, giving our children opportunities for all of us to together experience who this God is. So it's not just mom and dad telling them, so that as they experience it, they will put their faith and confidence in him, and they will tell it to the generation to come and the generation to come. You know what? It is not the God of mom and dad. It's not the God of our local church. He's the God that's real. He worked in my life. I've seen it. So anak, my child, I want to give you an experience so that you will see this too. Are you following so far? That's what this looks like. So as I wrap this up, I have one last story that I want to invite my wife to share. But as I set her up to do this, one last verse. And this is something we all covered in our table. Psalm 127. Behold, children are a gift of the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. I like themes around battle. That's why I opened up even with that ad, right? I'm not a war freak, for the record, right? I just like it. There's something about the challenge, the battle. When we look at this picture, what I love about it is I want you to visualize this. I have 6 kids. My job, like a warrior, is to be able to pull back. Imagine a bow. Point them in the right direction. And then let go. Like a warrior, like an arrow in the hands of a warrior. So all my children, and I get emotional thinking about this because I love my children dearly. And when I think about the choices and the directions they're headed, my prayer constantly is, Lord, help me point them in the right direction so that when they're older, they will not depart from it and they will go. And the reason I love that beautiful picture is because my final point, if we want to guide them to God, is we need to give them a mission. Kids, you're not here for dad or mom, not for yourself, not for the school, not for the church, not for success. You're here for the Lord. Know him, see him and his wondrous works, so that then, as you serve him with all that you've got, telling as many people as possible about who he is, his gospel message, and discipling as you go, you will be staying on mission. That is our goal. We need to help point them in the right direction. So as I wrap this up, I want to invite the most beautiful, amazing woman in the world to me. Let's please welcome my wife, Joy.
Thank you, honey. I think he wants something from me later. I'm just kidding. Okay, so Edric gave a little bit of a background of our family, that we're a homeschooling family. So naturally, as a homeschooling family, we are so intentional. We try to be really intentional about imparting biblical truths into the lives of our kids and really passing on character and letting them know who Jesus is. But the truth is, you cannot, none of us, no matter how much ministry we do, or even if we are a homeschooling family, we cannot fully insulate our children from the lies of the enemy or the temptations that are in this world. And so very interestingly, when one of our sons turned 9 years old, he's one of those kids that's a real thinker, a deep thinker, processes things on a deeper level. And he said, Mom, is God really real? And is he really good? Because if he's all powerful and if he's all knowing, then how come he willingly sends people to hell? I mean, in other words, he creates people whom he knows will go to hell. Like normal questions that a 9-year-old will ask. And so I looked at him and I thought, well, that's a really interesting question. And I was already sifting through the apologetics answers that I could give him. And honestly, I really tried. Like I would explain apologetics to him. I even recommended some literature for him to read. And I was even trying to share with him my own personal testimony, my walk, even the wondrous works of God that we've seen in ministry. And he said something very interesting. He said, Mom, that is your own personal experience with God. But I have to experience God for myself. So then I began to think, did we do the right thing homeschooling him? Why does he think like this? But it was great. I'm glad he was asking those things. And we journeyed together. And Edric and I realized that we have the same goals for our kids. Like all of you, I believe we have the same goals. We all want our children to love God, to know him with all that they are, and to really serve him and worship him. That is a shared goal that we have for all our children. But we began to realize that every child needs to really feel seen, special, and significant. And because we had lots of kids, we have lots of kids, it can't be a one-size-fits-all approach to raising them. The goal can be the same, but it has to be very personalized. So we realized we need to spend more time with this son of ours, because he was the type that if we didn't pay attention to him, if you didn't really reach out to him, he would kind of sink into his thoughts and entertain lies even from the enemy. So we decided we'll take him on a trip. We took him on this trip to Australia and New Zealand. It was about a 2-week long trip, just him. So we left the other kids behind. And during this trip, he had so much fun. We did ministry together as well. And I think he ate ice cream every single day because he loved ice cream. He probably gained about 10 pounds. And towards the end of the trip, we asked him, "Do you miss your siblings?" Because they're all really close. And he looked at us and he said, "No, not really. I really like being an only child." And so we're like, okay, interesting. So, that was that. And from then on, we started to think, you know what? Let's get to know this son of ours better. So we really got into his world. And he was so into botany and agriculture as he went through the years. And so we would take him to plant shops. We would get into his world, as Edric shared, understanding their interests. And he would love those moments. And we would have great conversations. And so we noticed that he would start to ask those difficult questions less and less. The more that we spent time with him and just engaged with him, we tried our best to answer his questions, but he would ask the questions less and less. Until a certain point, some years later, we noticed he started a Bible study with his friends. So he gathered, because we have a couples group every Tuesday night. There's about 15 couples, so there's many, many kids in that group. And he decides that he's going to start a Bible study with these children. So he starts a Bible study with them. And then recently he started another Bible study with some older peers. But I noticed during the pandemic, he started counseling other kids who had the very same questions that he used to have. Questions about, can we really trust that God exists? Does he really love people? Is he really a good God? And so I was listening to the way he was reasoning with them. And I pulled him aside one time and I said, "Eden, I find it so interesting that now you are the one teaching or coming alongside your skeptic friends to talk to them about what it really means to believe in Jesus." I said, "What changed?" I said, so part of me was like, is it because we answered your questions about God and apologetics so well? And he looked at us and he was just quiet. He looked at me and he said, "Mom, I really appreciate that you spent all those years, you and Dad made sure that I really had a personal relationship with Jesus. I really appreciate that." But then he was quiet and he got teary-eyed. And then he said, "But what really made a difference, what really won my heart to God was your love for me." And for him, love was spelled time together. For him, love was spelled us getting into his world. For him, love was spelled just having fun as a family. And I've been reading this great book. I read it before, but there's an updated version, and it's called Hold On to Your Kids, and the author is Dr. Gordon Neufeld. And we were at a conference in Berlin where we heard him speak. And he said something so compelling to both of us, because he said, "We were never meant to influence children whose hearts we do not have. If we do not have their hearts, we will not have their minds." So for us as Christians, if we do not have the hearts of our children, we cannot influence them to know Jesus. We cannot influence them, impart the values that we want them to internalize. Maybe they will while they're at home, but will they really follow them when they leave home? And so that really struck us, because he asked a question. He said, "When did your child first fall in love with you?" In other words, when did they really give their hearts to us as parents? And he also said in his book, the great thing is all our children want to be attached to us. They want to have a great relationship with us. You know, me as an adult woman with many children, I want to have a great relationship with my parents still. You know, when they compliment one of my siblings, I'm always thinking, what about me? You know, and they do. They compliment all of us and they love all of us the same. They said, you know, they have no favorites. But I realize I still desire the attention, the affection to be seen by my parents. That never goes away. And I think for all of you, you'd probably say the same thing. And so we really want our children to be strong in the Lord. We need to have a strong relationship with them. There's no shortcut. And the more Edric and I serve in ministry, the more we realize that we cannot even be successful in ministry, in the family ministry, if our own family is not okay, if our relationships with our children are not okay. And that has to be strong. And so as I close my part, our children will go through crisis in their lives. We can't fully protect them or insulate them from that. But I remember what my dad used to say. He said, you know, our children may not have storm-free lives, but we can storm-proof them. And if we have a strong relationship with them and we pass on Jesus and they go through the different trials or circumstances that they will go through, they will default back to their relationship with God. So for me, I was a victim of sexual abuse and rape when I was younger. But because my parents had a good relationship with me, because they made sure we were strong in the Lord, but first through their relationship with us, I was able to get through that because I knew that first, I had this loving family that's there for me. But secondly, all of a sudden, all the truths that they imparted to me in my growing up years, when I went through that crisis, it all made sense all of a sudden, all came together, and my own faith became very personal. So I don't know what your kids are going to go through. And maybe they've already gone through stuff. But my encouragement to all of you is, yes, we can teach the Bible. Yes, we can share the gospel with them. But God has made the family so beautiful because I used to tell my parents when we get together, family get together, we were just talking about this with the Ayalas, and when we would get together, I would say to my parents, you know, it feels so much like heaven on earth. And it makes me look forward to heaven because we have a family that's happy, that's one in Christ, that has so much joy in it. And if our families can be like that, if we can offer our children, our families, to have like a taste of what heaven is like someday, of course they will want heaven. And of course they will want Jesus. So that's the encouragement that I wanted to leave you guys with. And as Edric closes.
Thank you, darling. Thank you so
I
much.
know you guys know so much of this, but Lord willing, it's just a fresh reminder. And I hope you be encouraged. God bless you all.
Let's appreciate my wife. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's wrap this up. What are we learning? We need to be Jesus strong. Look at the person at your table, say, be Jesus strong. How will we do this? To make it easy to remember, F.F.G. Let's go. You guys are good. All right, so focus, foster, guide. Be Jesus strong. Focus on yourself first, foster strong bonds, guide them to God. And in 3 simple words, as we went through together, focus, foster, guide.